What if I told you that inside a nuclear reactor, atoms are literally being split apart, releasing invisible energy powerful enough to light up entire cities? Sounds terrifying, right? But here's the truth. The radiation inside a nuclear reactor is both incredibly powerful and incredibly controlled. Today, we're breaking down exactly how nuclear reactors produce radiation, where that radiation comes from, and why it doesn't automatically mean disaster. Let's get into it. When people hear radiation, they think of explosions, mutations, or nuclear meltdowns. But radiation is simply energy traveling through space. That's it. Your phone emits radiation. The sun emits radiation. Even your own body emits small amounts of radiation. What makes nuclear reactors different is the type and intensity of radiation involved. Deep inside a nuclear reactor, at the very core, lies a fuel made mostly of uranium, specifically uranium-235. An atom of uranium-235 is large, heavy, slightly unstable. And that instability is everything. Picture the atom as a tightly packed center, protons and neutrons held together by powerful forces. It looks solid, unshakable, but it's delicately balanced. Now imagine a single neutron drifting through the reactor core. It collides with that uranium atom. In a fraction of a second, the balance collapses. The nucleus stretches, vibrates, and then splits. This is nuclear fission. One atom becomes two smaller atoms called fission fragments. And in that split, something extraordinary happens. Mass is converted into energy. A tremendous amount of heat bursts outward. More neutrons are released, racing away to strike other uranium atoms. And high-energy radiation streams out from the unstable fragments left behind. That radiation isn't added in later. It isn't injected. It is born in the moment the atom breaks. Because the new fragments are unstable and nature always moves towards stability. To settle down, they release excess energy. That release is radiation. So at its heart, a nuclear reactor begins with something simple and profound. One neutron, one unstable atom, one split. And from that quiet atomic event comes the energy to power cities. When a uranium atom splits, the story doesn't end with heat and flying neutrons. In fact, that's only the beginning. The two pieces left behind, called fission fragments, are not calm. They are not stable. They are born in a violent moment, carrying excess energy, excess particles, and internal imbalance. Nature does not like imbalance, so these fragments begin to change. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. They begin to release radiation. First, there are neutrons. Some are released instantly at the moment of fission, fast, energetic, racing outward to strike other uranium atoms. These neutrons are what sustain the chain reaction. Without them, the reactor would go silent. With too many, the reaction would accelerate. That's why they are carefully controlled. Then there are beta particles. Inside unstable fragments, neutrons can transform into protons. When that happens, a high-speed electron is ejected from the nucleus. That electron moving at incredible speed is called beta radiation. It's not dramatic. It's not explosive. It's simply the atom adjusting itself step by step toward stability. And then there are gamma rays. Gamma radiation is pure energy. High-frequency electromagnetic waves released when the nucleus drops from a higher energy state to a lower one. No mass, no charge, just energy leaving the atom in the form of intense light we cannot see. Gamma rays are deeply penetrating. They pass through materials more easily than alpha or beta particles. That's why reactor cores are surrounded by thick shielding concrete, steel, water to absorb and contain this energy. Here is the key truth. Radiation is not something added into the reactor. It is not injected. It is not artificially created as a separate product. It is the natural consequence of instability. When atoms are split, they do not settle instantly. They reorganize. They shed excess energy. They transform. Radiation is simply the language of that transformation. Inside the reactor core, millions upon millions of these tiny adjustments are happening every second, each one small, each one governed by the laws of physics. Together, they produce the heat that boils water, spins turbines, and powers entire cities. It may sound dramatic radiation, particles, gamma rays, but at its core, it is a quiet physical process, unstable atoms seeking balance, energy moving from excess to equilibrium, and a system designed to harness that movement calmly, precisely, and under control. This is the moment where everything changes, because splitting atoms is powerful, but controlling that power, that's the real achievement. When a uranium atom splits, it releases neutrons. Those neutrons strike other uranium atoms. Those atoms split and release more neutrons. This is called a chain reaction. Left uncontrolled, a chain reaction can accelerate extremely fast. In a nuclear bomb, that acceleration happens in fractions of a second energy released all at once. But inside a nuclear reactor, the goal is completely different. Not speed, not explosion, but balance. Inside the reactor core, engineers designed the system so that, on average, each fission event causes exactly one more fission event. Not two, not zero, one. That delicate balance keeps the reaction steady, constant, predictable. How is that possible? Through control. First, there are control rods. These rods are made from materials like boron or cadmium elements that absorb neutrons. When inserted deeper into the reactor core, they capture more neutrons, slowing the chain reaction. When withdrawn slightly, more neutrons are free to continue the reaction. It's not dramatic, it's not chaotic, it's gradual, adjusted in small, precise movements. Then there is the coolant system. Water flows through the reactor core continuously. It removes the heat produced by fission and carries it away. That heat turns water into steam, which spins turbines and generates electricity. The water does something else important too. It slows down neutrons. Slower neutrons are actually more likely to cause fission in uranium-235. This helps maintain a stable reaction. Everything inside the reactor works together like a carefully tuned system. Neutrons are produced. Neutrons are absorbed. Heat is generated. Heat is removed. Constantly adjusting. Constantly balancing. Balancing RO dough, and surrounding it all is containment. Thick steel vessels. Reinforced concrete walls. Multiple physical barriers. Radiation may be intense inside the reactor core, but it is contained by design. The system assumes radiation will be present, and it is built to manage it. This is the fundamental difference. A nuclear bomb is about releasing energy as fast as physics allows. A nuclear reactor is about releasing energy as slowly and steadily as physics permits. Inside the core, millions of atomic events are happening every second. But from the outside, what you see is simple. Steam rising from cooling towers, turbines spinning, electricity flowing into the grid. No explosions, no mushroom clouds. Just atomic reactions carefully managed, continuously monitored, and kept in equilibrium. Power not unleashed but controlled. Here is something that surprises many people. Even after a nuclear reactor is shut down, the radiation does not instantly disappear. The control rods can be fully inserted. The chain reaction can be stopped. No new atoms are being split. And yet, heat is still being produced. Radiation is still being released. Why? Because the reactor core is not empty when it shuts down. It is filled with fission products. the smaller atoms created during hours, days, or months of operation. And many of these atoms are unstable. When the chain reaction stops, the splitting ends. But instability remains. These fission fragments continue to undergo radioactive decay. They transform step by step, releasing energy in the form of beta particles and gamma rays. This process is not sudden. It follows precise physical laws. Each unstable atom has a measurable half-life, a predictable rhythm of change. Some decay in seconds. Others take days. Some take years. And as they decay, they release heat. This is called decay heat. Immediately after shutdown, decay heat can still be around 6 to 7% of the reactor's full power. That may sound small, but in a large power plant, 6% is still an enormous amount of energy. Over time, that heat decreases. Minutes pass, it drops. Hours pass, it drops further. Days pass lower still. But it does not vanish instantly. That is why cooling systems remain essential even after the reactor is turned off. Water must continue flowing through the core to remove residual heat. Pumps must continue operating. Monitoring must continue, not because something is wrong, but because physics continues. A reactor shutdown is not like flipping off a light switch. It is more like turning off a furnace. The flame stops, but the metal remains hot for a while. The heat stored inside needs time to dissipate. In nuclear energy, that stored heat comes from the natural decay of unstable atoms. It is expected. It is calculated. It is engineered for. This understanding is fundamental to reactor safety. Modern nuclear plants are designed with multiple redundant cooling systems specifically to manage decay heat, even in extreme conditions. So, when we say radiation continues after shutdown, it does not mean the reactor is out of control. It means atoms are completing their journey towards stability, quietly, predictably, according to the same physical laws that govern them from the beginning. Even in stillness, the physics continues. So, is it dangerous? Inside the reactor core, yes, radiation levels there are extremely high, powerful enough to damage living tissue in seconds. That is why no human ever stands inside an operating reactor. Everything is shielded, everything is remote, everything is designed with distance in mind. But danger is not the same as chaos. Fire inside a furnace is dangerous, yet inside the furnace it is controlled. The same principle applies here. Outside the reactor vessel, layers of protection stand between the core and the world. Thick steel, reinforced concrete, water, containment structures. These barriers are not symbolic. They are engineered precisely to absorb and block radiation. Beyond those barriers, radiation levels drop dramatically. In fact, for people living near a nuclear power plant, the additional exposure is typically extremely small, often lower than the natural radiation you receive from the earth, the air, or even a high-altitude flight across a continent. Radiation is part of our natural environment. What matters is dose. What matters is control. Modern nuclear plants are built around that understanding. Monitoring systems constantly measure radiation levels. Safety systems are layered and redundant. If one system fails, another takes over, and another stands behind that. The real danger emerges only when cooling is lost, containment is breached, or multiple safety systems fail at once. History has shown that such failures are rare but possible. And when they happen, the consequences can be serious. That is why nuclear safety is not casual. It is cautious, structured, relentless. So is nuclear radiation dangerous? Yes, in the wrong place, at the wrong level, without protection. But inside a properly functioning reactor, it is contained energy, managed power, a force understood well enough to harness and respected enough to control. And in that balance between power and precaution lies the true story of nuclear energy.